Hey everybody, it's Norm from Tested, and today I'm going to be reviewing Google's Stadia. It's finally out. This is the Founders Edition, which is out this week for those who pre-ordered it, and I've been using it for about the past week, playing a selection of their launch titles and using it in a variety of conditions to see what the performance and the feature set for cloud gaming, at least from Google's perspective, is all about. Because as I'm sure some of you have read or heard, this launch is not without some interesting launch conditions, let's call it. So if you're not familiar, Stadia was announced earlier this year. It's something that Google has been working on for quite a long time now, and it's not necessarily their console, because it's not real console hardware, or a game platform. It's a cloud gaming service. They have data centers that they've set up. They've built these server blades with very high-end PC hardware, a ton of potential compute, an order of magnitude more potential power than what you get on like an Xbox One S, and the ability to then render those games remotely and stream them over Wi-Fi or over an Ethernet connection onto your Pixel phone, your laptop or Chromebook, one of your Chrome browser, or onto a TV using a Chromecast Ultra in theoretically as high fidelity, up to 4K HDR with 5.1 surround sound, and as low latency as you would be able to expect playing, almost any game in the home. The idea is that you would not notice it. Now, we went into a deep dive at Google to chat with their engineers about the kind of streaming technology that allows this to happen. I encourage you to watch that. I'm not going to dive too much into that compression and latency technology today, but we will talk about the experience. And there are a couple tiers to Stadia. A lot of people have been confused about what you buy or what you get. What's launching right now is the Founders Edition, so that's the paid tier to Stadia. You're paying essentially $10 a month, and you do get a couple months free with the Founders Edition, the hardware that you buy, to get access to the service. And with that, you do get one free game at launch. You get Destiny 2, but then you also then have the ability to pay for games, full price games that you would be able to buy on PC or other consoles. There will be a free tier to Stadia coming next year, and that will be, again, you buy the games, you won't get the free game like Destiny or whatever games they announce in the future, and your streaming quality will be limited to 1080, so it might make more sense for mobile play or playing on a laptop. But if you want the best quality, you have a 55 or 65-inch 4K HDR TV at home, you might want to then look at the paid monthly version of Stadia. Well, you're not buying game console hardware with Stadia. You're not buying a $300 or $400 game console or a gaming PC that you put in your living room or your office. There is the opportunity to buy some hardware to make Stadia work. So the Founders Edition comes with this controller, and you can buy the controller a la carte in the future. And the controller is really great. It's designed really well, has button parity with all the major consoles. So you got your triggers, your shoulder buttons, you got a good D-pad, 2 analog sticks that, again, feel really familiar if you're used to playing on an Xbox, and some custom buttons for accessing things like Google Assistant and sharing videos right in the center, as well as a center Stadia button, and it's charged over USB, or data runs over USB right now. On mobile side, it runs on Pixel phones, and this right here is what they're calling the Claw attachment, designed internally. This doesn't come with the Finals Edition. It will be sold exclusively on the Google Store. And it's a really nice clip, really well designed as well. You clip it onto the controller right here, and it exposes the headphone jack, your Stadia button, as well as the USB-C port, and then phones can snap in right there. The grip does, for example, this Pixel 3 XL, you have to put it off-center because the grip would press on your volume buttons. But again, you plug in the USB-C cable right here, and you then have the ability to control your game on your phone. And this is really nice ergonomic design. On a TV side, if you want to play Stadia games on a TV, at launch it'll only work with the Chromecast 4K, the Chromecast Ultra, and in fact, at very launch, it only works with the Chromecast Ultra that ship with the Founders Edition, and other Chromecast Ultras will need a firmware patch. The version that comes with the Founders Edition has the Ethernet port right here, which is nice, so you want the lowest latency, you're going to want to connect that over your internet connection and not just use Wi-Fi. But of course, the idea is that you can play in almost as many places as you have Google Chrome or Chromecast products. So you can also play this on a laptop or PC in your Chrome browser with a keyboard, mouse, or plugged-in USB gamepad. So let's talk about performance. Now, when I did my hands-on with the Stadia at Google's headquarters, I was using their internet, probably the best possible case scenario. And I had a really good time with the performance and latency and image quality in their demo session. But taking it to home, I was surprised to find that it was basically the same. I do have gigabit access over Sonic Internet at home, and the latency on my TV using the Chromecast and using the controller here was really, really good. Like doing an A/B test between that and the local Xbox One, it was almost indistinguishable playing a 4K game on the TV. If you go right up to the TV and you try to look at the anti-aliasing and look at some compression, you may notice some of that if you're going right up to the TV, but at a standard distance away from the TV of about 10-15 feet, no problems with the quality. The quality even looks better on a mobile phone. Of course, that's running at the phone's resolution, and in the case of the Pixel 3 XL, that's 1080p, and I was just flabbergasted. I love looking at these high-end console games and PC games like Tomb Raider rendered on this phone because my brain just doesn't believe it works, right? Because I'm waiting for the phone to overheat, I'm waiting for the battery to drain down, the fans are, nothing's like, makes me feel like this is watching a YouTube video. It looks like it's locally rendered. I'm like pixel peeping and trying to see if I can see dithering, but it just looks great on the mobile device. The thing that doesn't work so well on the mobile device is sometimes the UI. A lot of these games are designed for play on big screen TVs or designed for play on a computer screen, a 27-inch monitor, 24-inch monitor, and when scaled down to a 6-inch phone, I am finding that the UI isn't adapted to be bigger for the phone. I am squinting to read the text and a lot of the prompts that pop up, so it's not optimized for this size of display. And I did find myself wanting to tap the screen to hit dialog buttons when it says press A to close this window or OK. I want to hit that OK button with my finger, but developers for these games haven't made them touch compatible. And I don't know if that would be possible to do so, because when you play this on a PC on the Chrome browser, keyboard and mouse is activated, so I'm wondering, could they just activate touch as an analog to a mouse click, for example? Even though I know touching doesn't work, I still find myself regularly trying to touch the screen on this phone as I'm playing games on Stadia. The places where I did find the most noticeable compression or dithering end up being on a web browser and on the PC screen. And you do need a decent internet connection to make this work. Every time you load a game, there will be a check on your connection. So home Wi-Fi and our office Wi-Fi, which is honestly not the best Wi-Fi, thanks Comcast, still stream fine, but places like airport free Wi-Fi, that's not going to actually be able to work. It won't even try to run the game on poor Wi-Fi connections. So your experience may vary. Right now, it won't even work over mobile connections, and it will consume a fair amount of bandwidth. If you're at home on a 4K stream, for example, you may get up to 15 gigs per hour of download for just the video streaming. But of course, if you're talking about a game like Red Dead Redemption 2, which is already going to be over 100 gig download, perhaps that is a little bit of a trade-off. And some of the advantage, of course, of Stadia is that you're not having to download or update not only the game, but also the hardware system. The promise is that over time, Google will update their server hardware, so you're always going to be getting the cutting edge. Some of those benefits are supposed to also be immediately noticeable now because they're using fast storage, but game load times are still here. I'd say they're comparable to having like an SSD on your system, but you are waiting for load screens. I was a little bit surprised. I thought the promise would be that games would be optimized to load almost instantaneously, and that's something that console makers are putting into their next generation console designs. So this definitely, unless they adapt that to work for those games on Stadia, feels more like a current gen console situation, less than some magical next gen immediate loading console game. I talked about the UI and some of the adaptations that the developers have to make for their games to work on Stadia, and there's a fair bit under the hood, it seems, that developers will have to tune. For example, you can't adjust graphic settings in games. You have gamma settings and brightness settings, but it's not the PC game experience where you can toggle between resolutions or anti-aliasing. None of that is transparent to the user. There's also some back-end work done to make sure the save game works with Stadia between different instances, but you don't get access to that file data or modability, and that's still something to be determined how Stadia will work with mods. It's something they're aware of, but they just haven't revealed to users just yet. It really feels like a lot of the UI work is adapted to make work for big screens. I think it looks really great on a big 65-inch TV, and it looks really good on a 27-inch computer monitor as well. The graphics look great on a mobile phone, and it's amazing to see it running on a Chromebook, but the UI elements aren't perfectly scaled for those size screens at this point. I don't know how much work developers have to do to make that custom work to make that look a little bit better. But the idea is that you're supposed to be able to swap between devices, and I was curious how that swapping would work. So there is, in the Stadia app, if you back out of a game or if you pause a game and you load up the web browser, you can say resume state, and you have basically a grace period. If you turn off your Chromecast and you're then moving on to your Office and loading Stadia up on your Office computer, you have about a 5 to 10 minute grace period where it's going to save that exact state. Any longer than that, then the server basically reverts to a save game and you have to load the game from the main menu. So it's not quite instantaneous, nor is it quite as persistent as I'd hope. So that idea that in the future you'll be able to pause a game in your living room, jump in a Lyft or a ride share and play the game on your phone, and then play it at an airport and then play it on an airplane, that's not going to be anytime soon. What's also not available at launch, and may come down the line, are some features that Google made announcements for when they announced Stadia earlier this year, and that includes crowd play, the ability to watch a YouTube video of someone playing their game on Stadia Live, click join multiplayer, and join into that game immediately in their browser. That sounds like really cool potential for cloud gaming. Not available at launch. Nor is state share, the ability to share where you are in your save game with someone seamlessly so they can jump into where you are and you guys can play, asynchronously, but have that state sharing of save games, not available. Nor is Stream Connect, the ability for people to take a bunch of different streams of people playing Stadia games and then composite them in some type of UI. Again, lots of cool opportunities that take advantage of cloud gaming, but not ready at this point. Right now, there's even just trying to get parity with the console gaming experience, and at launch, they don't even have things like achievements or the friend pass just yet. What I would also love, and I think would help Stadia, is the ability for them to enable some type of demo mode, something that would allow people to try games out, maybe play the first 10 or 15 minutes of a game and use that cloud streaming service, and then that would maybe entice people to then buy the full version of the game. That's what I would like to see come to cloud gaming in general. But perhaps what's most disappointing about Stadia at launch is the available games list. Google put out a list of all the titles and all developers they're working with, and there are some notable admissions that hopefully would be out by the end of 2019, but at launch there are just 12 games. Yes, there's the Destiny 2 game that everyone gets for free, and that's important because that's going to be a closed ecosystem for multiplayer. Destiny 2 players on Stadia can only play with other Destiny 2 players on Stadia. But the other games that you can buy right now, the flagships include Mortal Kombat 11, Shadow of the Tomb Raider, the latest Assassin's Creed Odyssey, and most notably probably Red Dead Redemption 2 is probably, and that's last year's flagship title. That's probably the best, highest quality game that takes advantage of the fact that you don't have to download a 100 gigabyte game file to get it playing immediately. And I think the games that they've promised coming down the line, things like Doom Eternal and Cyberpunk 2077, that's going to really push the limits of the latency and quality. The game like Cyberpunk is going to look amazing, and it's probably going to be a massive game file that could potentially take huge advantage of cloud streaming. And a game like Doom Eternal, Twitch shooter, that is going to push the limits of the low latency, which will vary for different people in the launch countries for Stadia. There are also considerations, like I mentioned, data caps. Streaming, if you have a gigabit Ethernet connection, chances are you probably have unlimited data. So using up to 15 gigabytes per hour, streaming 4K HDR 5.1 audio video isn't going to be a problem. But if you have a capped data connection, 1080p streaming will take up to 10 gigs per hour. Even 720p connection will take up to 4.5 gigs an hour. That can add up. But it doesn't bode well for when Google and other cloud streaming, cloud gaming services inevitably want people to be using this on the go with their mobile internet connections, with their Verizon and AT&T mobile plans, and they're going to be the costs associated with that. And that's what they're thinking, because this is a long-term play. Google says they're in this for the long haul. They've built up an internal game development studio to make games which we won't see the fruits of for maybe several years. They haven't shown anything for that yet. And I'm not worried about necessarily the technology. I know that Google has the data centers. They are the right people to be investing in cloud streaming. And both Sony, Microsoft, and even NVIDIA, they've already invested in cloud streaming. That feels less like a proof of concept technology. We even saw it working to some extent years ago with OnLive, and more of an inevitability. But my fears with Stadia is going to be the game support. And one, how difficult will it be for developers and publishers to port their games to Stadia? They knew this launch was coming, and even then, they only have these 12 titles at launch. Things aren't ready. Why is that the case? Is it really that much more work on the back end to adapt these games? I understand it's not going to be a one-button solution to make a PC game work on the Stadia platform, but if it's going to be a lot of work, that means a lot of costs. And so my other fear is that publishers may be scared away not only by that cost, but the unproven market that is Stadia and cloud gaming in general. It's that chicken and egg problem. Publishers may not want to invest and spend the money making their games work on this platform if there aren't enough users out there, and there aren't going to be enough users out there if there aren't enough compelling reasons or content to make people adopt this platform. And at launch right now, where they're already asking people to spend $10 a month on this or invest $130 on the Founders Edition, there's not a lot to make me convinced that there's going to be a big enough community to convince more publishers to jump on board. Now, Google has a lot of money. They can invest in the technology, they can invest in the game studios, but they could also invest in ways to get people into this platform for free. And so the next tier, the free version of Stadia, I think will be a lot of the proving grounds for this service and for Stadia in the first year of launch. That's coming in 2020. So in 2019, right now, November, as the Stadia has launched, it really feels like more of a beta launch. I wish Google would be more transparent about that. Not all the features are there, and yeah, like other Google products, will have more feature rollouts, but if it's something that they announced back in March and have promised throughout the months, and they're calling this a launch, that's just not acceptable, because this is not YouTube or Google Docs. This is supposed to compete with PC gaming, with Steam, with Epic, the game store, with Xbox, with PlayStation, and those consoles, those platforms don't launch with almost half of their feature set not there with the promise of the feature set coming and with this paltry of a launch lineup. So consider this an evaluation of Google Stadia beta. In my mind, it's still beta at launch, and we'll come back and reevaluate it a couple months down the line when there are more opportunities to play more games, when the free tier comes out, and when that community builds. Thanks for watching. If you have other questions about cloud streaming, about Stadia, please feel free to post them in the comments below, and we'll try to address them as best we can, and we'll see you next time.